Hello and welcome to Tech Talk Thursday. An abrupt end to the music, and you'll find out why in a second, because today we're going to be talking about how to look better on Microsoft Teams with presentations, how to bring the Teams workflow into Ecamm, and how to use Ecamm in Microsoft Teams. There's been a couple of questions around that and how to get that configured. And if we have time and things don't blow up, we may even try to use Google Meet. Heavens forbid. So what we've done today is we've got poor Martin McKenna, who has decided to join a Teams meeting, which we've got set up. And what we're doing today is I'm actually bringing Martin in via Teams into Ecamm, doing some screen sharing and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I'll talk to you a little bit in a minute how that all hangs together. First, we have John who's joined us. So hello, John. Just going to say hello to you. Bring it up there. I hope you're doing well, getting ready for Creator Camp. I know everybody's excited about doing different things there. But if you've ever been interested in using Microsoft Teams with Ecamm and whether it works, hopefully we're going to prove to you today that it does work. It's not the best quality in the world. I'm on a free Teams account, but at least we can show you that you can bring a guest in who wants to come in on Teams. And Martin is even going to go one step further and show you how you can look a lot better on Teams with some immersive presentations using a combination of Ecamm and PowerPoint. I know it's a Microsoft product, but we're all Microsoft today. So, Ecamm might blow up because it's seen Microsoft on the Mac. Let's find out. But first of all, let's bring Martin in. And Martin, welcome to the show. And we can see you. Can they hear you?
You can see me. Well, can they hear me? Can you hear me, John, out there? Let us know in the comments, because we're doing some fancy audio routing, because it's not quite the same as just doing a Teams meeting. When you're doing a Teams meeting and you're then streaming the Teams meeting from people in different locations, there's some additional complicated elements that you have to do for audio. And
Yes.
we're wondering how synced up we are and things like that. So it'll be interesting to find out. But in fairness to Microsoft Teams, those things aren't an issue if you're not trying to stream a Teams meeting.
Yes.
It's just because we're trying to be clever.
We're trying to be fancy. And the good news is, I think John can hear you if I go to the chat. So we can. So thanks, John. You can hear Martin loud and clear. So, John, I know you're a Rodecaster user as well, and I may show you how I've finagled this audio routing to get it working. I'm not using Loopback or anything like that. I'm just using the second interface on the Rodecaster to actually bring Martin's audio in. But if you're actually wondering how we're actually doing this, so Martin is in my Ecamm production right now, and he looks like he's just a camera source. But with some Ecamm trickery, what we're actually doing is we're screen sharing the Teams meeting or a portion of it and bringing Martin's sort of main image into the production. And I've asked Martin kindly if he wouldn't move at all for the next 45 minutes, so to make sure that we don't move him out of the frame. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into the Teams share and show you what's going on. So here is Martin working his way through the Teams nonsense. And we've got the Teams set up here at the moment, as you can see. And what I'm wanting to show you is a couple of settings that if you want to start using Teams with Ecamm, there's a couple of things that I changed to make it look a little bit better. I've left them on to start with to show you where to disable them. So if you'll notice in the bottom right-hand corner, Teams is always going to show the host's view as well. And depending if there's multiple people on here, there are going to be different ways that Teams is going to show you the gallery view and so on. So what I've done for this particular one is if we go up to view here on Teams, I've actually just selected the gallery view. An option down at the bottom in more options where you can just do hide me. And that'll just move me away from the main Teams screen. Now, because I'm using Ecamm, I'm obviously in the bottom right-hand corner as a camera overlay as well. And I just wanted to leave all the other Teams controls on because how we're getting the audio in and out of Teams is set up like this. So for the microphone settings, the speaker is, in my case, the Rodecaster Pro 2 main stereo. So that's a channel on the Rodecaster that I've actually added to Ecamm, and that's where Martin's audio source is coming from. So the source of Martin's mic is coming into the Rodecaster on that particular channel, of which I've added it into Ecamm. I'll show you in a second. And then in terms of Martin being able to hear me and the music that I played at the beginning of the show, we're just using the standard Ecamm virtual mic that now, as you know, is a system-wide extension. So that's how sort of the audio is being routed. If I just go to host view and go into, where's my live demo mode here? It's on the wrong screen. I have to click on this screen and then show this screen. There you go. So in terms of what I'm doing here, let me just get rid of that Social Stream Ninja. What I've got is I'm using the Rodecaster Pro 2 main stereo, and I've added this as a source. You can add and remove different audio channels within Ecamm sound levels, depending on how many interfaces you've got connected to your system. In my particular case, I've got the Rodecaster, so my main chat is going here. And if Martin was to speak,
1, 2, 3, 4.
You can see that his audio is coming through here. I've just muted it on this one, so in case, you know, he's getting a drink of water or something like that. So, but that's how I'm getting the audio in. Now, you could use something like Loopback, for example. Loopback will take the audio routing. You could also use the new setup with virtual channels from Rode. I could have used that, but I'm not going to for this particular case as well. So John is just asking a couple of questions. What is my input mic on Ecamm? So hopefully, John, I've explained that. The input mic is my Rodecaster Pro 2 chat channel on the Rodecaster. That's my input channel for the mic. And that's the one that's going out to Martin, which is being used via the Ecamm virtual mic. So everything in here is the Ecamm production that I'm sending back out to Teams. So there's no integration, obviously, between Teams and Ecamm, but we're just using the capability of the virtual mic and the virtual camera in order to be able to display this information. So the other quick thing I just wanted to show you on Teams is that there are options for audio processing. So what I've tried to do in here, and I think it should be working, is that I've disabled the noise suppression. So turn off noise suppression, just disable anything that Teams is going to try and do in terms of messing with your audio, just so you can get as clean audio as possible out between the guest and yourself. And I've just muted the mic. So just make sure that that's set up for when you're doing that type of workflow. Now, I could have made this a little bit less messy, but I just wanted to show the full sort of Teams view. And as you can see, the quality of the Teams video isn't the worst in the world. Just wait till we look at Google Meet. But at least Teams is looking a bit more presentable in this particular case. And you can do a few more things, you know, with tidying things up. If you really wanted to. One last thing that John's asking is the mix minus on my Rodecaster. So what I've done, John, in my particular case, let me just go back to comments, is that what I've done in this case is I've just stopped any of the mix minus going through the main audio channel. So yeah, I've just allocated that where none of my sort of audio is going to be sent back through the Rodecaster Pro 2 stereo. So there's a lot, as you know, there's different processing and different ways of routing the audio in the Rodecaster. If I didn't have a Rodecaster, then I would have to use Loopback and play around with that. And I think that's why people have been asking questions around the Teams integration and the fact that it could get a bit weird, particularly if you're using Ecamm. But I don't know why nobody could see the Ecamm's virtual mic in Teams, because I had no problem. I'm not using the browser version of Teams. As you can see, I'm actually using the main Teams application. And Martin, just out of interest, are you using the Teams app as well since it's been upgraded now?
So I am just using the browser version. And the reason for that is I went to use the app version, I think yesterday, day before, and it just, because I'd not used it for maybe a year, it decided it was going to do 2,000 upgrades, and I got bored waiting. So I just went into the Chrome browser. But I'm just joining the Teams meeting using Ecamm Virtual Cam and Virtual Mic. So there's nothing fancy going on from my end, and I didn't understand anything that Neil just talked about at all.
Great. So that's what we're here for. So hopefully that doesn't explain anything about the audio routing, but at least the main purpose is that you can use Ecamm's virtual mic and virtual cam into Teams, just like you could do with Google Meet or anything else. Zoom, of course, they've just made it much easier now for the Zoom integration piece. But that's not to say that you can't run through that and make it work. And John is asking a quick question. John, if I get time later, I will try and show you the. Oh, oops, that's not come through very well, is it? Where is it? There it is. So if I get time later, I will show you that. But as you're at Creator Camp next week, I can show you there as well if you're interested. All right. So what I've asked Martin to do today, very kindly, is we're talking about how to use a different presentation software and to get a little bit more immersive with your presentations. And one of the questions Martin's been asked a number of times is, well, if I'm trying to present things in Ecamm and so on, do I have to rejig my slides? Do I have to change things around in order to make the slides fit the Ecamm production? And Martin's talked about this before, but he's going to show us today that that's not the case. But I think you're going to start with just showing us how to use PowerPoint in Teams, some of the things that you've tweaked, and some of the features and functionality in PowerPoint and how they may differ, and sometimes how they may be a little bit better than things in Keynote. But I think the two products are quite sort of comparable in terms of features and functionality. But I'll let you take it away, and I will put you on the Teams full screen.
Okay. So hopefully this is going to work, guys. So all I am doing is bringing Ecamm virtual camera into Teams, and through the wonder of screen sharing in Ecamm, I'm going to take you through a little bit of PowerPoint and a couple of the features that I actually quite like. I suppose it's one of the most common questions I get asked, which is best, PowerPoint or Keynote? Well, in my opinion, I prefer Keynote because I'm very familiar with it. PowerPoint, they just seem to want to do everything backwards from the way that I want to do things. But that's just a difference between Microsoft and Apple, entirely up to them what they want to do. But I did also ask that question or ask a question on LinkedIn not so long ago to find out how many people are actually using PowerPoint as their default tool, how many are using Keynote, how many are using Google Meet or something else. And 95% of the audience were using PowerPoint. And I think something like 1% were using Keynote. So it goes to show you that most of the world is using PowerPoint, and it's available on the Mac. And one of the big deals for a lot of people is they don't want to be changing their slides about. So I will come to that a bit later. But first of all, I wanted to show you a couple of features which I quite like on PowerPoint. Now, I don't know how well they're going to come over, because I feel that my camera image here on Teams is I'm looking very unwell and slightly green, and I assure you I'm feeling fine. So I don't know what that's all about. Neil looked all right. But just to get Neil back, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go into my default scene here.
Okay, put you there.
And I'm probably going to appear a couple of times at the bottom of the screen here. And this is the way that people tend to present things, with somebody at the bottom of the screen. And this is my whole PowerPoint deck at the moment. And I want to have it like that because I want to show you a couple of bits of functionality. So I'm just going to drop in a picture, and a picture of Neil in this particular case, because this is a couple of things that I quite like about PowerPoint, and I've used actually quite regularly, is that I can come in and change picture effects on PowerPoint, and there's some quite nice ones that you can play about with. So there's a number of presets, and there's also a format pane over here, so I can look at them in a pane rather than in the drop-down menu, entirely up to me. So I've got things like shadows and bevels and things like that. And we'll come to those in a minute. But one of the things that I quite like in Keynote in PowerPoint is that this little lighting feature here. So if I was looking at Neil's image there, and I brought it in, and I thought, well, you know, I'd rather it was a bit warmer, then I can click a button and it's going to give me a warmer view of that image. Now, in this particular case, I don't think I want the warmer view, but I might want to change that around in a variety of other different ways. And you can do all sorts of things like put an artistic effect on it. So there's a whole load of artistic effects. So if I wanted to blur the background or have it starry because this was sort of a different look and feel I was after, then I can do that, which is quite cool. Um, and what I love about it as well is the ability to play about with some of these things as well. So you can change all sorts of contrasts and stuff like that within the picture itself. You can put gradients and flows around it if you want to do that. And I can change sharpness, brightness and contrasts and saturations, similar to that you can do in Ecamm. But if I felt Neil's room was a bit dark, I can bring that up and have that nice and light. If I then come up to my picture effects, I can actually choose to go a little bit mad, and perhaps I want to put this particular picture on a bit of a bevel. I can put a bevel on it. If I then wanted to play about again with the picture effects, I want to put a shadow on that as well. Maybe I can put a bit of shadow on it. And in the shadow itself, I'm going to have to come over to the other menu here to play about with that. This one here. So the shadow itself at the moment is no angle, no distance, which isn't really of much use. So let's bring some angle and some distance and some blur in on that. And I can get a nice kind of a 3D effect going on. And that could, that may be a bit like a business card or something like that sliding onto the screen. And that would look quite cool. And if you really want to, you can go add in and, additional levels of stuff as well. So I could put a bit of an orange glow on that if I wanted to. I could put a bit of a bevel on it. So if I put a bevel on it, it's going to start to give that a slightly more of a 3D look and feel again. So I'm going to want to up the size of that. And if you look very closely at the edges of that image, it's actually widened them out a little bit there as well. So it's actually very easy within PowerPoint to manipulate images and change their color contrast and effects and the way that they look on the screen. And you can imagine that sliding in and looking kind of cool if that's what you wanted. So that's one of the things which I actually very regularly use, which is just drop an image in and play about with it in PowerPoint, because it's much easier than doing that in Photoshop or something like that. It's way more complicated in Photoshop. It's just much simpler to press the button, oh, make it warm. Oh, that's better. And then I'll maybe use that as a background in Ecamm or something. So that's one of the elements that I play about with. Another one, which I was just going to show you here as well, is that people are always saying, oh, Keynote's much better because it's got magic moves, right? You can't do magic moves in PowerPoint. Well, you can. Sorry, guys. So if I come up to my slideshow and do play from current slide, interestingly enough, a couple of things there. You might have heard a noise. I don't know whether that went through Neil's complicated Rodecaster setup, but on PowerPoint, you can actually add in noises with transitions. So there's a whole load of things like chimes and cheers and all sorts that come with transitions. So you can add those in. Another thing, you may well notice that I am in a hexagon here because I've got hexagons as part of the theme for my show here. So you can put yourself in any shape you'd like in terms of the camera. So a heart or a thought cloud, bubble type thing, or anything you want, any shape that is on PowerPoint, you can put your camera into that shape if you want to. So if I had a hexagon theme going on, then I can put myself into the hexagon theme, and then I can choose to move myself around. So most people don't think you can actually do that at all in PowerPoint, but yes, you can. And you can go on to bring in all of your different elements on PowerPoint as well. If you look very carefully where it says Ecamm testing, that's a cutout lettering in slightly 3D. And that's because in PowerPoint, you do have this very powerful magic type text stuff that you can do. And that's pretty cool. There's also the equivalent for diagrams as well. So if you're bringing in pie charts and bar charts and things like that, PowerPoint is actually pretty cool at bringing in some of those things. So bring it in, here I go again, up here again, and move around again. Slightly different variation on the theme, but moving around with the animations actually is quite easy. And it's got some flashy checkerboard type things that you can bring things in, or this is slightly bigger than it was before, but very similar to Keynote. Some of them are not quite as smooth, I don't think, but you can play about with them. Next, we're going to go do a morph, and just if you just watch my camera image carefully, did you see that it just sort of jitters in the middle? So on Keynote, my camera image would have been perfectly smooth, but what I find is there's a bit of a jump if you try and change size on PowerPoint. It's only very subtle, and it also pauses occasionally as well, I find. But it does move all of the blocks of text and the images very, very smoothly. So you could do some very clever stuff and hide behind blocks and layer things up and have people revealed nice one at a time from behind an image of a city or something like that. I've done it a few occasions where I've split up an image and maybe had something like Edinburgh in the background and then a church tower, and an image would come out from behind a church tower, and it looks kind of cool. So there's a lot of things you can do with that with PowerPoint. And actually, I'll tell you what, it's really good at removing backgrounds as well. There's a special pen tool that you can go grab different areas and remove and add them back in again very easily. And actually, I hate to say it, but it's way better than Keynote from that perspective.
Just have
Some
one
other
quick
things
question.
that,
Could I just ask you a quick
sure.
quick question? So, in terms of your camera setup at the moment, just for people who are curious, because you have the Teams meeting set up whereby you're using the Ecamm's virtual cam coming into Teams, and then for your demo, you've just picked the Camlink 4K or whatever as the camera source in PowerPoint, right? Because obviously, if you used Ecamm, it would be a mirror of itself, and that's similar what you can do to in Keynote, right? Where you can pick these multiple cameras depending on what interface you've got. You can use the Camlink and so on, and you can put it, as you said, into any shape and so on, right? With the Camlink. Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah, so it's a very good point. So this is just my Osbot tiny light camera, direct,
Right.
with no special effects on it, coming straight into PowerPoint. And I would do the same with Keynote if I wanted to be moving around the screen and things. The separate image in the circle, if people are seeing that, is actually from Ecamm. So that is the Ecamm camera. This is just my direct camera, and it's turning off every now and again when I'm not moving on the scene,
Right.
which it does when you're on preparing work. But that's just coming straight in from my standard USB camera in my particular case. But yeah, could be any other camera. And you can add in multiple different ones as well if you've got them on PowerPoint. You can also do some clever stuff by adding in an Ecamm camera and a USB camera and putting different effects on different ones. But that's for another day, and probably for use with Keynote, because that's what I would tend to use it with. But some of the other things that you can do with PowerPoint, one of the things that I quite like about it is that when you bring in a slide like this, that you can actually add in some design ideas. So if I look for some different design ideas when I bring something in, it will give me different designs. It does well. Sorry, let's turn off format picture and put designer on instead. So it will bring up a whole bunch of design ideas that it's created using AI, and some of them look really nice. And you can just click on more design ideas and it will keep giving you more ideas. So for instance, there's one there which is quite a nice looking fade, which I quite like this fade here, and I'll bring it in a second. But what it's going to do as soon as I do that it's going to lose the little orange line that I've got. So if I said, oh yeah, I quite like that, it's now lost that orange line that was on the scene. And because it's AI generated, I can't go to my next scene and just apply the same settings. If I go to my next slide, it's going to create a whole load of new design ideas. So I can't just apply the same design ideas across a lot of different set out windows. It just doesn't work like that, which is a bit of a shame because some of the design ideas are great, but that's the way AI works all the time, you know, so you get what you get, so to speak. Um, anyway, I like the whole design ideas thing. I just find it very frustrating that when I move, for instance, to this slide here, it may not give me the same design idea again. So it's not got that particular blurry one, for instance. And I would have to just keep going down till eventually I found one that looks similar, but it might not be the same. So um, those are the design idea elements of it. But yeah, it's a bit clunky. Great idea, but not quite perfect, really. But what I also wanted to do was just talk about the way that people normally present their slides. So if I go back to me presenting my slides again, and yeah, let's go to the slideshow first of all, and I'll play from the current slide. So the circle that you're seeing in the corner here is me on Ecamm. So this is the way people normally tend to present their slides. They do something like this, and in Ecamm, they either, he says, looking to see if his camera is unlocked, they either say, oh, right, I'll put myself in a little circle in the corner of the slide, or they try and put themselves in vertical mode at the side here. So if I go into the different shape and go into tall, then I can appear tall. But it's not really very good because going through my slides, as you see, I'm half covering things up. So if I want to make that round again, so let's make that round again, back into a circle or a squircle. Let's put it in a circle. If I want to make that round again, in order for me to not be hanging over the text here, I'm going to have to make myself pretty small. And circles are also a pretty terrible way to present anyway, because you can't now see my hands unless I specifically am bringing them up and into the scene. So that's not particularly good. And if I go through my slide deck, I can't really predict whether or not any of these other slides that I've got I'm going to bump into. So I have to be fairly tiny on the screen in order to be able to look, you know, even half decent. And I think there is a better way of doing things, and it's not that difficult. So let me just go to my next scene. So here we are on my next scene where I might even want to bring in some placeholder comments. And suddenly I am a good size on the screen. You can see my hands, you can see my hand movements. The slides are still a decent size. I can still move through the slide deck as well. So there is nothing stopping me clicking my little clicker and running through my slide deck. And you're seeing my immersive presentation here. So what have I done? The slide deck itself has remained exactly intact. And this is the big deal for a lot of people. They'll tell you, I'm given a slide deck by marketing and I can't change it. So this concept of playing a slide deck and then trying to put yourself over the top of the slide deck doesn't work because they can't change the slide deck, and therefore your image may well obscure something on that deck. So they need to have the slide deck left alone, totally alone. So there's an easy way to actually do that. And all I've done here is my slide deck is on the right hand side here. And if I unlock my screen share for that slide deck and move it about, in fact, it's in a group at the moment, so let's unlock the group. So if I move that screen share about, you can see that's just my slide deck. And what I've done is I have put a shape overlay behind it and made the shape overlay the same color background as the slide. So suddenly when I'm on the deck, the whole thing looks immersive. So I can play about with that a little bit, make it slightly bigger or smaller, depending on how I want it to look, and then crop it if I need to as well. So I'm going to crop that back edge off there again because I've mucked it up by playing about with it a bit. But let's put it back. But that's my slide deck as standard and without any messing about. And I can just move around between it. And I could have myself and Neil on this slide, and we would both still be a good size. And the big deal here is that I can see my screen. I'm not saying, can you see my screen, and then disappearing behind the screen. I'm a good size on the screen. I can see the audience can see me. And potentially it's a much, much better way to be presenting your slides. Everybody's looking on widescreen format. They're not likely to be looking at a Teams corporate meeting on their phone. And if they are, they should be shot. So they really want to be looking at it on a big screen. It's probably a wide screen. So just make use of the screen space and you can have something very easily that looks like this sort of immersive look and feel. So
Wonderful.
That's me done. Back to Teams.
Well, let's get into some comments and some thoughts around that. So first off, I mean, one of the biggest problems, as you said, is that people are saying, well, I can't really change anything. How do I make my presentations look better? And the thing is, when you've just got Teams or Zoom, I know Zoom's trying to do more things with the sort of dynamic layouts and things to make it a little bit more immersive. You still have the same problem, though, that you are limited with a fixed, rigid layout when it comes to presenting a slide. And as you mentioned, Teams will put you, as I showed at the beginning of this, Teams will put me in the bottom right. If there's a gallery view, it's going to shove everybody to the top and you're included in one of those, or it's going to do some switching, and it's really not immersive. And how many times have we been on these presentations where people are saying, can you see my screen now, blah, 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 and they're always asking for that validation. It's like people say, "Am I live? Have I gone live yet?" It's the same thing though, right? It's making sure that it's a bit more fluid, and to be able to present well without having to worry about whether you're on screen or whether people can see you or not. It's a much more immersive feeling when the person who's delivering the presentation or the keynote, whatever it might be, is actually there on screen. If you were doing an in-person event, you wouldn't be hiding behind the screen with your clicker and just talking from this voice in the deep. You'd be there in front of the projector back in the 90s, or flat screen TVs, whatever you are presenting in front of now. And I think it does make a huge difference. So with using things like Ecamm or even OBS, for example, you can do the same thing as long as you take care in making this layout look more fluid and having some thought into changing the colors, changing the sort of the overall look and feel of you and your sort of system that you're using, whether it be Ecamm or OBS. You can fit and look into that corporate styling really easily. And I think you've shown that on a couple of other videos, but it's nice to show it live and in Teams, which is unfortunately what a lot of people use. And I'm just going to bring a couple of comments on here to highlight that point. So hello, Roy. Thank you for joining. Now, Roy says, but I hate Teams. Why would I want to look better in Teams? I miss Google Meet. Well, I don't miss Google Meet because I don't think it's very good. But unfortunately, the corporate world that we are both from, and still today, Microsoft is the tool of choice. And a lot of enterprises get a big deal when it comes with Microsoft. They get Office thrown in, which comes with Teams. So it's that whole sort of platform is being used. So you've got limited choices if you are to present. And with obviously the virtual world now, if you do have the ability to use something like Ecamm or OBS or something that will give you a bit more flexibility in how you can actually layer things out. Because all we're doing effectively is layering things in such a way that when you present it back to your workforce, it's not just that standard Teams presentation. And it can make you really look more elevated, you can stand out more, and you look a lot more professional and on point when you are using something like Ecamm or this workflow that Martin's shown you, and it's a much nicer experience as well for the audience. The audience want to be more engaged, and I, like anybody else, are guilty of putting that little circle in the bottom right when you're presenting because it's just easy and convenient. But when you've got more choices and flexibility for the layout, then I think it goes a long way into just spending a little bit of time to make things look a lot better.
Yeah, and if you want to take it a step further, then you could put up a green screen, because Ecamm does green screen, and you could be standing up on that as well. So it could just be your profile and then some of the gig behind you, or you could literally be standing up where I'd placed my image,
Right.
and that would look. People would be blown away for that perspective, and I mean, another area that everybody uses Teams in is education in the UK.
Yeah.
Because Microsoft give education everything for free. So they all use Teams, all of them. So Teams is everywhere, I'm afraid, Roy. There's nothing we can do to avoid it. We try our best as Mac users to avoid Teams and PowerPoint, but actually, you know what? PowerPoint's not that terrible. I think it's caught up with Keynote, actually. I think Keynote has not particularly advanced in recent years.
Right.
So it's always been ahead of PowerPoint, but they're definitely catching up. There's a few things, as I say, the animation, some of it is a bit quirky and a bit flaky on PowerPoint, but actually they've got a lot of good features that Keynote doesn't have.
And depending where you're from and what you're using and who you're interacting with, maybe some of your clients, maybe some of your customers are wanting to level up their presentations, and all they have available to them, because they may have been given these presentations by their team, is PowerPoint. And unfortunately, PowerPoint, as you mentioned when we did the survey, there's so many people using it, and it's never going away unless something really cool comes out. But corporate industries are still going to be using PowerPoint for a long time. So we have to embrace what's available to us and make the best of the tools that are available. And just by some careful planning and layout, you can really get a much better looking presentation. And, keep in mind, I know Roy, you've only just joined as well, Martin is in Teams right now. I'm not bringing him in another way into Ecamm. This is just a screen grab using Ecamm and then bringing Martin in via Teams. John also says the same thing. He uses Zoom, Teams, and Google Meet almost equally. When I was working in my corporate IT job, all the customers and projects that I were working on, everybody had different things. We had to use WebEx. We had to use Google Meet. Some people use because they were sort of fully on board with the Google Suite platform. And it all depends on what your customers are using. Some people prefer that. When Zoom first came out, it had a lot of security issues. So there's a lot of corporate companies vowed never to use Zoom ever again. Even though they've changed now and everything's wonderful, people will never go back to Zoom. So you're only going to have to choose Teams as the tool of choice for doing these types of presentations. But I think I've been quite impressed with Teams so far. It's not been that terrible during our sessions, at least anyway. But yeah, it's interesting. John actually says, where we go? Oh, a few other people here. Okay, 4K PowerPoint for the win. Yes, I guess we could do that. So Roy also says, question. I love presenting information, try and be clear on what I'm sharing. What are some great ideas for presenting information besides using PowerPoint or Keynote? Great question, Roy. Do you have any thoughts on that, Martin?
Mm-hmm. It depends what you're trying to present, because I've had this discussion a few times before, in particular with Doc, actually, who will say, you are the animation, you just need to have one word on your presentation deck, and then I'll come back and have a chat with Neil and we'll laugh hilariously because, for instance, there's just been a worldwide outage of Microsoft and it was caused by CrowdStrike, and we're all together in a meeting trying to work out where that CrowdStrike problem lies in our network infrastructure, which is multi-layered and international. And we're bringing up on screen loads of diagrams, loads of reports, and it's just impossible to do this
Yeah.
wonderful, we just use it with one word. That is a use case for somebody who's telling a story, and that's the end of that use case. It's not a day-to-day use case for most people who are presenting their sales figures or their projections or the latest design idea for something. These things all require something a bit different. And if you can mix and match your presentations for something, then great. That's more, I guess, keynote style. But I would tend to say, don't always appear in the same place on the screen all the time.
Move
That would
around.
be one tip.
Mm-hmm.
Change your background as you move between slides. That would be another tip. Subtly. So you might just go from the background we've got here with some yellow and black stripes. Then maybe the next slide is black and yellow stripes the opposite way round. But that's just you flicking through your deck and making a minor change just to keep a bit of eye interest going on, an eye break as they call it.
Yeah.
But I would definitely change your size and location on the screen rather than try and go through 50 slides with you sitting in the same place in the same image.
Yeah.
Move about a bit. Ecamm lets you do it.
Yeah.
So
great tips. I've got a couple of others as well. So things like video pencil, where you can be more immersive and maybe drawing on the screen, you know, as I've just done here. So for telestration, it's not actually working now for some unreal reason because it just crashed on me. Thank you very much. Hang on a second. Let me get that working again. It'll probably come back. There you go. So you can draw on the screen and do things like that. You know, it's really nice for sort of highlighting certain things. One of the other things that I've done recently is maybe you can mix up and change your camera angle. So maybe you can have a secondary camera angle as you're going. And Ecamm will allow you to switch between the two camera angles. This is on a slider that I've dug up that I've had for ages, thrown an old camera on it and just using that. So now I can mix between different sort of views and so on whilst you're going through the different presentations. As Martin said, you can sort of mix it up really easily with regards to what you're trying to present, and just keeping it fluid and moving, I think, is one of the things. Things can get pretty static if you're using the same stuff.
Yeah, don't let things get static, but also try and engage your audience. So if you flick back in the list on YouTube, you'll find us talking about Streamer Live, which is the audience interaction platform that works with just about anything. I'm guessing it probably works with Teams as well, but I don't know if I've tried that. It definitely works with Zoom. So people just type answers to questions in the Zoom chat, and suddenly you've got a graph or a word cloud or a map of the world or a spinning wheel or something like that, all within your live presentation deck.
Yep.
And without having to go to another third-party tool. So literally they will type in the chat. I certainly know it works for YouTube and it works for Zoom and various other platforms. I never thought to look for Teams, but I would guess it works for Teams.
I think
as
it
well.
does. It does, yeah. So Mark has got a question. Mark, we're using it right now. Welcome from Bali. I know you've just got off the Ecamm Live Academy. We are running Teams integration right now. If I go back to Teams, Martin's actually in Teams as we speak. And at the beginning of the video, I did go through some of the audio setups and the video configuration. So Martin, just to let you know, is coming in a Teams meeting right now. We're not using Ecamm for Zoom or anything like that. I am screen sharing my Teams app, as you can see right now. I've hidden myself from the Teams meeting, and the one that you can see in the bottom right, the circle that Martin always loves when he's presenting, is me in the bottom right corner, just in Ecamm. And then the host and guest views that you're seeing are just screen grabs from the same Teams meeting, and I've just popped Martin here as a sort of guest, as a sort of a camera placeholder. It's not actually a camera, it's just a screen share masquerading as a camera, but I've done that for these comments and set things up like that. So yes, we are using Teams right now. We've been running it for the last 45 minutes, and Martin's gone through some sort of workflows and how to use PowerPoint within Teams and to level up that presentation. So if you go back in the replay later, you'll see how we've set this up. Some more questions. So Roy says, sometimes I share information on screen or in scenes, or do a green screen slide in Keynote and show the info without showing. I am using Keynote. Oh, yeah, it's trying hard to mix it up. So, yeah, I mean, Martin's presented before, and I think this is probably maybe something we can do in the future, just again showing how sort of the different use cases for Keynote, especially when you're integrating with Ecamm, whether you're bringing the Keynote presentation in as a camera source via your iPad, for example, and then over the top of that, you can add sort of other elements. Or as I've mentioned, you can also, and I've done presentations with Canva. So I've run Canva on a separate monitor in full screen mode, and then brought in this immersive view with a couple of guests and the presentation as Martin's just shown before, and then used Video Pencil to highlight various things on that. And that was one of the videos I have on my channel, which is all about camera basics. And that was a use case which I took from Martin on how to sort of be more immersive and use your presentations a bit better using something like the layout he's shown. So you can apply it to anything. You don't have to use Keynote. You can use Canva, PowerPoint, any sort of slides that you want. I actually had a customer today asking about how to sort of do a workflow without necessarily using any PowerPoint or Keynote, and you can just do this in Ecamm. You know, you can build up your slides, and as Martin's going to be showing us in the future with some of the profiles he's building, a simple run of show where everything is just a slide-by-slide view. So all you're doing is you're advancing every scene, and it appears to be, you know, different slides. So there's lots of ways you can mix up your presentations. It's mainly about the sort of the engagement and the other things that you can do. And as long as your topic is useful and you're providing value, then, you know, use whatever you have available to you to make your presentations more engaging. James has got a question. Is that Social Stream Ninja using for comments? Yes, because LinkedIn comments don't work currently, James, on Ecamm. So, and I'm actually getting to grips and liking more the flexibility with Social Stream Ninja, just because you can configure it in a bit better way and it stays exactly where you put it, and you can have different sort of shapes and sizes with Social Stream Ninja on the various scenes within Ecamm. So yeah, I'm using that at the moment. Sorry, Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you just reminded me of something which I do, which is bring my keynote presentations in as a camera into Ecamm, because that allows me to then do all sorts of clever things with zoom and pan on the actual presentation itself, but also something as simple as change my background to black and white and then change me as a camera to color, because I'll not be on that camera, and then flip it round the other way. So if I want them to look at me and listen to what I'm saying, I'll be in color. If I then want to change myself to black and white and bring my presentation in color, then suddenly they're concentrating on the presentation, and then I flip it around the other way when I want them to concentrate on me. So it's a very simple little trick or hack, but it's a great way of playing about. And also you can do things like maybe blur the presentation for a moment while you're speaking, and then on the next scene have it unblurred, because you're applying camera effects to the actual presentation itself. So you can do whatever you can in the camera effects you can do in presentations. Now I've also found by accident that I can also apply LUTs to those presentations if I bring them into camera as well. And one of the side effects of that would appear to be, because the LUT, the lookup table, is highlighting and contrasting different colors, is that text and things like that appear sharper, which I never even occurred to me, found out by accident. Oh, if I apply a LUT, oh, my text looks a lot better.
Right.
And it's incredible the difference it makes, actually. So that's just all things that you're not meant to do, but interesting things to do. What I think might also be cool is if we did perhaps a vertical Zoom presentation. So we could do a live Zoom presentation out to LinkedIn in vertical, but to highlight the fact that we can get multiple people on the screen and maybe have square video running on the screen and do it all live to LinkedIn. And I think that's something that's been talked about recently. And I think a lot of people think you can't actually do it, and you can already do it. So there are a few tricks to get things to work. So for instance, You can resize your Keynote deck to make it square and then drop video into the square and then export it as a square video and then drop that into your live stream in vertical, and it looks really cool. So there's a lot
Ton
of
of
things that we can
options.
do with presentations, not in Teams, but we might want to think of that as a future one.
Yeah.
How can you do a mini presentation in vertical? Is it possible? Yes, it is.
Yeah, and we could
And
do
in
we could
particular,
go to
because
Instagram as well. I think that would be an option.
yeah, it would go to all of the different platforms. And as we know now, in LinkedIn are now pushing vertical video as of very recently. There's a new button which Neil seems to have on his phone, but I haven't got on my phone.
You've not got it
So
yet.
I'm a bit jealous, really. I don't get it. Don't know why. It goes to Portugal before it goes to Scotland,
Yeah, of
the
course. Yeah,
rollout.
there
But
you go.
there's a new vertical video button, which I would very much likely to go have a play about with. We've already done some testing,
Yeah,
and we know that while at the moment, if we go live in vertical, that the live in vertical is kind of in a widescreen format. It doesn't look brilliant. But when you look at the replay, that the replay comes out in full, full tall format.
yeah,
So
it looks good. Yeah.
I can only say that must be coming, that we can stream, because we can stream in vertical. Presumably, they can display it in vertical very shortly as well, I would think,
Yes.
live.
There's lots of ideas there, I think. And I do think because of the questions we've been having and the fact that there's a lot of people now looking at vertical video, that's definitely one show that we should be looking at creating. Just simply, how do you build this up and then go live in vertical format to these channels? And I think it's
Well,
probably... Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, I was going to say, I think you said that Eden Lou had
Yeah.
just come back from a big conference and was talking about what people were doing in
Yeah.
vertical. So maybe you want to reiterate that story.
Yeah, so she'd just come back from TwitchCon, which, as you know, is one of the sort of the biggest conferences. I'm not sure if anybody here went to that, but Eden was on the Creative Amplifiers show, and we were talking about what types of things are people actually live streaming these days. And, unbeknownst to me, I thought TwitchCon was all about gamers. You have about 1 million gamers there showing off all their different sort of streaming platforms that they're streaming to for games and what the sort of the gear and how they're setting everything up. But it was quite interesting that there were therapists, magicians, all kinds of people now that are using Twitch as the streaming platform. But a lot of it is in vertical because they're finding that the vertical format is really easy for them to sort of get to grips with. And a lot of people are just using that platform, Twitch in particular, to stream to. And it's quite interesting that there's such a varied range of people of all ages. It's not, she said there was, older generation, younger generation. There's so many people who were just taken to live streaming to showcase what they create. So on a creative channel, like what Lala does, for example, or as I said, there's magicians, there's therapists talking to people on a live sort of workshops and things. So the market is huge in terms of the live streaming capability. And the more you can get better at live streaming and more au fait with the platforms that you're using, and just use the platforms for their intended purpose and not try to squeeze a 16:9 frame into a vertical format, then just play to the strengths of the actual platform and create your presentation and your production in line with that. So definitely I think vertical we'll touch on and probably do a show just purely in vertical. And obviously, if we go to vertical on YouTube, that's going to hit the shorts shelf. And as Martin pointed out, LinkedIn has got its own little shorts sort of category now. It's not shorts per se. You can have long form content on there, but it's all vertical. And is it today or later this week, next week, sorry, that YouTube is going to increase the shorts time to 3 minutes now?
To 3 minutes, yeah.
So I think it's the 15th they were saying something like that. So there's a lot more things that's coming down the pipe with vertical specifically. But if we're looking at how to level up presentations from a corporate perspective, then everybody's still going to be using things like WebEx, Teams, Zoom, not so much Google Meet, but a little bit of Google Meet to do that. Yeah, and obviously PowerPoint for the main thing. Now, speaking of Google Meet, and we have a few minutes, are you
That's me trying to pad it. I was trying to
You're
pad
trying to
out the
pad it
last
out.
6
Well,
minutes there. We
I
didn't get
just
that
thought for
far.
giggles. I mean, if it all goes wrong, it doesn't matter because we're at the end of the show anyway. What we were going to try and do is just to see how well Ecamm looks, not how it performs, but how it looks if I now set up a Google Meet meeting. So I've got I think I sent you the link, Martin, on Facebook Messenger. So stand by. We're going to see if we can get Martin running on Google Meet. And I'm going to kill this Teams meeting, Martin, when you are ready. If I don't see you come back in the Google Meet, then I know there's a problem. Once in the future, yeah. So, okay, give me a second and I'll join you in a sec. All right, maybe. All right, so I've killed the Teams meeting. And now we're just going to join Google Meet. Living dangerously. Absolutely, John. Is this going to work? Let's just join. I'm going to move that over there. I'm just going to use Moon. All right, let's go into this a second. What's happening? Move that out of the way. Let's go to Teams. Sharing. That's not sharing that. Let's go share this. Where is it gone? Okay, now let's do a host share. That should be sharing that. So let's do allow notifications. Join now. Don't care. Let's see what happens. Whoa. All right. Hello, Martin. I'm not sure if you can hear me. I can't hear you yet. Let's just find out why I can't hear you. Let's just make sure that we've got the audio set here. So we've got the wrong speakers on my side. So I'm going to choose. Hang on a second, student.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
There you are. You're coming through loud and clear. Can you hear me?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, that's fine.
Look at that. There you go. Google adjourn if it doesn't come back. Well, there you go. Thanks for joining us. No, I'm just kidding. So that is Google Meet. Actually, it doesn't look as bad as I first anticipated. Let's go back to host and guest. See, because I've just used the same screen share and the same bits and pieces, if I can just get rid of that nonsense at the bottom. I've already got the settings done. No, get rid of that. There it is. It's not great. I mean, I have to crop you a little bit, but anyway, for the sake of this live stream and this testing, I can hear you perfectly fine. You're coming through okay. Hopefully no echo or anything like that or any slapback. I think everything looks pretty reasonable.
No slapback.
So all we've done here is just used Ecamm Live's virtual mic and camera again and used it in Google Meet. So I don't think it looks terrible. And obviously, if there's multiple users on there, then yeah, that might not work terribly well. But you'd have to then sort of set this up in a different way. Probably, I don't know how you'd crop out if it's in a gallery view, but we've only got 2 of us on here at the moment. And obviously, if I was to make me full screen, then it would just be will be awful. So John says no slapback sounds good. Okay, well, the power of Ecamm and Rodecaster and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's worked better than I anticipated. But yeah, I'm not going to ask you to present anything in Google Meet, because you could do. I mean, you could just be going straight to this share again, and you could just do exactly the same thing. But
well, let's just do it. Let's just have a look and see.
Just
what
for
that
giggles,
like.
then. Yeah, actually, it'd be interesting to see what the text looks like. The text looks pretty clear to me. Yeah.
In my corporate slide deck and moving about. So Google Meets Ecamm, so to speak.
Interesting. So, yeah, that looks fine in terms of quality. And David has mentioned that the sound latency seems better than Teams was. So in terms of,
I think the colours look a bit better than Teams.
Yeah, you looked a bit jaundiced before, I think. So you're looking better now, like you had a bad meal or something. So
that's yet to come.
Yes,
it's early yet.
So if there's any other questions from who's joined us, I'll give you a few minutes whilst we're just going to wrap up. But today, just to recap what we've gone through, what we've tried to do is show you that you can do a lot better using something like a virtual camera, using Ecamm, OBS or something like that with PowerPoint to level up your presentations. It doesn't matter what platform you are using in order to present your material, whether it be Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, and so on. It's all about really thinking about how you're going to present your material what tools you're going to use in order to present that, and just think about the layout and making it immersive for the people that are going to be joining your workshop, live stream, seminar, or whatever it is. Yes, John, but the color correction is difficult in Ecamm because unfortunately, the screenshot that I'm using, Martin is actually coming in. I don't think I can do any. I can't. I can do blend mode. I can put a shadow on you and things like that. But because Martin's not coming in as a camera in this particular case, I can't apply any of the camera effects. So that's one of the other of the downsides. But Martin can. Martin can change his color and pretend he's in a film noir or something like that. But you can do whatever you want on that side. But that's the only downside. Now, if Martin was to come in to Teams or Google Meet via an iPad, that iPad then can come in as a camera source. As Martin's mentioned, you can do all kinds of stuff. We can look up tables, change the colors, do whatever we want. So there's a few things that we can do with this workflow to make it better. Yeah, absolutely, John, because it's a screen share, it's a capture, and we can't really do much with it. But again, if you've got the ability on the guest side to mix things up with using filters and stuff like that, then why not? You could definitely use it. Now is in sepia tones. So yeah, you could change it. The difficulty is as well with some of these platforms is they all have their own color cast on them. And I don't care what anybody says, every platform has a slight color cast. Even Ecamm has a slight color cast on it compared to obviously capturing the video directly in your camera. So there's a few things that could be tweaked. I know if you're on a if you're on a Zoom's call, for example, then you look a little bit pink and red on a Zoom call compared to what you would do in your normal camera. You can adjust that in Ecamm. So if you're using Ecamm for Zoom, you can tweak your camera settings to sort of turn down the saturation or add a little bit of a tint in the camera effects in order to make you look a little bit better. So there's lots of things you can do if you're using Ecamm. So that's one of the other benefits as well. But each program does have its own little color cast, I think, associated with video. I don't know why that is, but it seems to be the case. And then John saying, maybe we should ask for effects for sources, including capture. I don't think it would be a bad thing to have some maybe saturation, brightness, and tint that you could apply to any overlay source, whether that would be a screen share or something else, because then you can manipulate the colors a little bit better. Well, you can ask Ken and Glenn that at Creator Camp next week, John, when they do the fireside chat and so on. Make sure you get all those questions in. I will do another video at some point on Rodecaster setup. John, I can speak to you anyway next week when I see you. But we're not going to be around next week because obviously it's Creator Camp and I'm going to be over in Boston doing my thing. But we are hosting CCTV during that time. So Martin's going to be potentially coming on to one of the shows maybe. I don't know if we do an afternoon for us. It might be early enough for you to come on and maybe have a quick chat, maybe show people what you're doing in your store. But if anybody does want to come on the show next week in Boston for Creator Camp, then you're very welcome. Just look on the Ecamm channel and the Creative Amplifiers channel, find out how to do that. You can come on Zoom. And John says, let's talk to the twins. Absolutely. So we won't be here next week, Martin and I, but we will be the following week. If you've got any topics specifically that you want to talk about, whether it be presentations, be careful what we ask for, right? If it's anything to do with presentations, using Ecamm, leveling up your various meetings, we're not doing WebEx. I'm not doing WebEx. But we'll think of something. Or if not, we'll pick a topic. But we'll definitely get Streamer Live working next time, and then you guys can basically pop in a topic and we can vote, and the vote that gets the highest number will be the topic for the following week. But we did do what we said. We did do Teams, we did do Google Meet, and we did do presentations and PowerPoint. So I think we ticked
the good news is we don't have to do it for another 3 or 4 years now. So
well, no, not particularly not. And it is a shame that Martin can't be with us this year, but he'll be with us in spirit. But there you go. And John says, yeah, no, we're not doing WebEx. Absolutely not. We draw the line at that. Anyway, if there's no more questions, really appreciate everybody joining today. Martin and I will be back in a couple of weeks. Look out for some sort of news coming up from Martin's store very soon. Some goodies available for us all coming up in the near future. And with that, I'll end the stream now. And I'll see you in a second on Google Meet, Martin. Take it easy, and thanks for joining, everybody.